There's also like the study that found like lucky people smile twice as often. They have more open body language. Do you think that just kind of attracts more people into your life and that creates more luck, or what's kind of the science behind that?
Well, it's interesting because if you think about it, like when are you more likely to do someone a favor, for example, or when do you have more incentive to connect the dots for someone? It's usually when you like them, when you feel that's a nice person, like I want to help them out. And so I think a lot of these kind of studies are a lot about that point that the more we like someone or the more someone seems trustworthy and so on, the more we are then in a position to actually do something for them and vice versa. And so in a way, we're building a bit of that kind of field that allows us to have more serendipity because of those kind of different factors. I'm a big believer, I'd rather have someone not smile than have a fake smile, for example. So I think there's a lot around the science also of authenticity, right? Of making sure that you'd rather have a grumpy but funny person, right, than like a kind of whatever fake type person. So I think there's a lot behind also that depending on how we are as a person to not force ourselves into particular, oh, you have to smile more type situations, but actually more around, no, like what is the bigger picture? The bigger picture, to exactly your point, is to say, what are ways of building trust with other people? And some ways like this is, right, that you're not hiding behind something, but that you're actually more open to conversation, which is what some of these kind of practices were about.
Yeah, and I think it's especially powerful if you combine like multiple tips. Like it's great to be extroverted, but if you combine like the hooks you mentioned, where instead of just answering a simple question with, I'm a technology owner, you say, I'm a technology owner, I'm an author, I study this subject. It gives people more like aspects of your personality, and they could kind of like hook onto the part they find interesting, and then you build a relationship from there. So I think, yeah, combining kind of the advice you give to people, and I think you also mentioned is called you compound your serendipity. So combining the tips just makes it even more powerful. And I think that's a wonderful tip in your book as well.
And that's where it gets really exciting, I think, right? That in a way, it's this funny thing that once you start with that kind of like initiating some serendipity, it really is compounding, right? And you will hear then some people literally would say, oh my God, like I now need a better filter because I have all this potential serendipity, but I need to filter a little bit. And I found that to be a really interesting question then, under which conditions do I want serendipity, right? So for example, when I started writing the book, I was like, great, I want to have all serendipity. I want to run into potential publishers. I want to run into potential case studies and so on and so on. And then once I knew what exactly I wanted to do, I was like, I don't want to run into anyone anymore. I want to go into the like coffee shop and kind of just focus on writing the things down and not being interrupted, not having distractions. And so I think it's also a lot about kind of building one's filters to say, now is a period where serendipity is great, but also now there's a serendipity, there's a period where I need a good filter that doesn't get me distracted.
Right. And just to like kind of recap a few of the tips we covered, it's like one, to kind of be open to the unexpected. Two, it's like be curious. Three is like, the scenarios where you want to be extroverted, and some scenarios where being introverted might help. And then you also talk about how you also want to calm your mind through like meditation and yoga. What role does that play in like increasing your life?
That's a great question, because when you think about it, what makes us more alert to situations, it's really that we're present in a situation, right? That when I am present in a conversation with you, it makes it easier for me to spot a potential dot, to connect the dot, versus if I'm all over the place and I'm distracted and so on. And meditation really has that function of making us be more in the present, but also more importantly, it makes us more grounded in general, right? And I think the more grounded we are, the more we find kind of things that we actually want to connect dots with, right? I think people who are a lot all over the place, they might connect a lot of dots, but it might not be to the core of who they actually are. And so in meditation, the bigger picture, I think behind a lot of this is also to say, what is it? Who do you want to be? Because serendipity is so much about potentiality. It's about what could be. And so the question always is, yeah, like who do you want to become in some way? And a lot of this will be random at some point, right? But also then the more grounded you are, the more you can react to potentialities in more kind of grounded ways.
Yeah, and another one of my favorite studies about that is like talks about how when people are like stressed out or they're multitasking, I believe the experiment was count the number of images in newspaper, and people were so focused on that they missed out the words that said if you stop counting, we'll give you like $100 or something like that. And I think it just goes to show like if you're like kind of stressed out, how that could like impact, and you might miss a big opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great observation, because that was actually, I've always been fascinated by exactly those studies where, in a way, to your point, the more we are in fight or flight, or the more we have a particular goal that we want to achieve, the more we are missing the potentially really interesting things. And you have that in a lot of contexts, right? I mean, I see that a lot in company contexts also, right? Where essentially you have people, and if you're the manager, you would say, we need to cut costs. And so if you tell someone to cut costs, they will now walk around and think about, oh, great, like, how can we fire this person? How can we do this to cut costs? Versus if I would have said, look, we're in a tough spot here, we need to do something to be able to survive, then that person might come and say, oh, actually, we don't have to cut costs, because we can just bring in more revenue by having this new client here that I didn't even think about. Or, these kind of things where, once you don't like over fixate people on a particular thing, but still the bigger issue behind it, then they can think about not only cost cutting, but also how to increase revenues and all these different types of things. And so it's really, in a way, finding that balance between over specifying and, at the end of the day, leaving people a bit of wiggle room to actually find really creative solutions.